Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Float Activity. Today's guest, Tangie, also known as the Feel Good Expert, is a human design reader, mentor, and coach. She radiates warmth and positivity. You'll often catch her on TikTok Live using the line, "I use human design to help you feel good," or at least a little better. And you immediately know it to be true when you interact with her. She has used human design to her advantage by utilizing it to create a thriving business, become a better parent, and travel the world. This was such a great interview, and I love to talk all things human design, and I can't wait to dive in. See you on the other side. Welcome to Float Activity, a place to inspire and empower beings to embrace self-love and self-development for an achievable balance of productivity. I share different ways to come back to your intuition through spirituality, self-care, human design, cycle planning, wellness, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you've been here with me before, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited to join you in this journey as we learn together. Hi, Tangie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kara. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I always love to ask my guests what their favorite self-care practice that they have in their daily practice or even weekly practice that's important to you.
Wow. What a nice question, right? Like to just get you in the mode of like, I do take care of myself occasionally. And the thing that is making me laugh is my first thought was like, well, I brush my teeth. I brush my teeth every day, twice a day, and I floss. And that feels like taking care of myself. But I think you understand as well as I do being in the season of young kids. Like I have a laundry list of self-care practices that I would love to consistently do every day. And sometimes I hit it and sometimes I don't, but for sure, I'm going to brush my teeth. And that sounds like basic minimum hygiene, but it is a time that I'll really reflect on my night, on my day. And a lot of times, immediately after brushing my teeth in the morning, I'll pop in my AirPods and listen to Abraham Hicks. That really puts me into a receptive mode for the day.
Their wisdom always hits me hard. I love Abraham Hicks. The reason I love asking this question is because I always get answers that I never see coming. But there is something to be said about being intentional with brushing your teeth and brushing your teeth. And so I think for you, saying that it gives you a time to reflect is you're taking that time to really focus on yourself, whether that's brushing your teeth or meditating, whether it's a few seconds or a few minutes. If we ever have the lovely chance for a few hours, usually not the case, it's intentional. And that's the purpose of self-care, is that we're intentional with what we're doing. And so I love that. I love these kind of answers because I think it opens up listeners to be more intentional with the time they give themselves. And so if they don't feel like they have time, what a beautiful way of just being intentional with brushing your teeth. So it's those answers that really I love on this kind of stuff. It always brings out some fun and interesting ways.
And I love that you reflected it in that way because it is a moment of presence for me in something that can be very habitual and mindless. But I like my toothbrush. It's pink and it is a travel toothbrush and it has gone with me lots of different places. And that's really exciting. And I think about that really. And I love my toothpaste and I had to bring it from America because you can't get it where I'm here in Mexico, right? And so it's a moment of gratitude. I cannot go get my special scope toothpaste from any given store. It came with me and it's true.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's just like, you know what makes you happy. And that's the case for it. Yeah. How can you support yourself in a way that makes you feel good? And what a better way than something that you do in the morning and at night? Like it is not just a daily practice. It's wake up, go to bed kind of thing.
And it's the perfect foundation for habit stacking. If you're a mom and you're in this season of motherhood and it really does feel like there is no room, it's like, well, there is one thing that I do every day and I can do it with intention. And if I happen to free up some space, I can add something on top of it because I'm going to do it. I'm going to do that every day. Like that, we're not compromising on that. There are other things that I can throw out the window, right? Like some nights I'm like, oh my God, I have to wash my face again today. So, I'll do the bare minimum. And then there are days that you can spend more time on it and you can create a whole routine around it. But giving yourself grace. And this is another thing I love about human design, to be like, man, I'm an inconsistent person and I'm not keep shaming myself about that until I die. I'll do some things some days and I'll do other things other days and it's going to be okay and nobody's going to die.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point, is that in human design, I am built this way. Why am I trying to fight it? And so, how beautiful is it when you're like, I am inconsistent and I'm okay with that. This is who I am, and I'm not going to fight that. And isn't life so much easier living when you know you're built that way and you're not trying to fit in the expectations of other people?
It's definitely helpful. I was talking about this with my friend yesterday. You at least have this anchor point of being able to say, okay, I know that I immediately validated and gave myself permission to be this way when I heard it. When I heard it through the lens of human design or astrology or wherever you heard, when I heard it, I was like, yep, that's it. That's me. So now I have this anchor point. And I know in human design, there is this potential to go into a bottomless pit of not self. But at least now I know what is self, what is not self, and what is neutral, right? What is something that I'm not even focused on in this moment. At least human design gave me this center point, this anchor point where I can say, okay, yeah, I identified that as myself. And at least now when I'm being not self, it's conscious.
Do you think you can break down a little bit of that not self so they understand what that really means?
So I think the easiest thing to do if you're looking at your human design chart, and if you've never pulled it out before, it's really easy. You can Google human design or you can find it on my website. Lots of different places that you can get charts. Choose which one is the most pleasing to you, because I'm not attached. But when you pull up a chart, the easiest thing for me to do is just to look at what's colored in and what isn't. Okay. What's colored in is something that is going to be consistently you. It's going to be part of your consistent makeup. And what's not colored in, it doesn't mean you can't have it. It doesn't mean you've never had it. It doesn't mean you won't have it. It just means it's inconsistent. It's not something that you should put any value on based on your own life experience. And it's not something that you should expect to be consistent for you. It's not something that you need to rely on. And so when I look at the colored in parts of my chart, which there aren't very many, I'm a splenic projector and I have two defined centers. That's it. And when you look at your chart, you've got a lot more definition. But when I look at my chart, I'm like, okay, I've got this one colored in, this big energy center colored in, I've got this big other energy center colored in. Let me understand the themes of those. And those are really basic themes of where I'm consistent. But let me also understand the themes of the things that are not colored in, because when those narratives come in, I can say, oh, that's probably not me. That probably came from somewhere. I feel like I'm supposed to meet an expectation that my body doesn't want to, right? There's the bigger themes. And then, of course, there are gates and channels that can be colored in as well, which are a little bit more detailed, but still they're informed by the larger theme. So if you've got a gate, it's going to be located in an energy center and it's going to be matching the theme of that energy center to an extent. And if you've got a channel, if you're not a reflector, you've at least got one. If you've got a channel, it's going to reflect the themes of the two centers, right? So I've got the root and the spleen. And so the root for me is moving things forward, and the spleen for me is in healthy ways. And that's my mantra. Whenever I'm shaming myself about not being productive enough, which is coming from my sacral, when I'm shaming myself about not being thorough enough, which is coming from my solar plexus, when I shame myself about not being enough in general, when I shame myself about my value, my worthiness, my enoughness, that's coming from my ego, I can say, oh, yeah, that's not me. I can really rely on moving things forward in healthy ways. And I'm always going to be creating momentum. And I will generally always have drive. It's not an all day, everyday thing, but I'm going to have the drive to move something forward. So let me rely on that and not rely on placing my value on my productivity, on my thoroughness, on my value as a human, as a parent, as the things that I have and own, not place value on the ego things, right? And just say, well, I move things forward in healthy ways. And I've got that one channel that drives me to have purpose. It drives me to have purpose intuitively. Okay, we'll do that. And all of the other stuff that comes in and out, we'll contemplate it, sure, because we're having an experience on earth, but we're not going to like fixate on it because there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. In human design, astrology, all of it is not attaching ourselves too much to what these things are saying about us, but what's the insight we can get from it? And how does it feel within us when we say like, "Oh, okay, that is why I have this need to prove my worth. I can't get through this lesson, but what can I do to kind of lean into it?" Okay, like I know that I have to check myself and be like, what is it that I'm trying to prove? Why am I trying to prove it to myself? And that's with Heart Center. And you said you have that open as well, right?
We both do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pain point.
Yep.
It's a
Yep.
definite pain point. Yeah, and I mean I love the way that you put that. And that's what I tell people about human design all the time. It's not a belief system. I'm not asking you to believe in it. I say it's a context, it's a framework, it's a language so that you and I can agree that there is this shadow, there is this light, and there is a neutral. And at least we can say, okay, we're talking about the ego right now. And so we're talking about in the framework of the ego, if it lands and resonates for you, that feels like a bottomless pit, that feels like something unattainable, but that feels like a hyper focus point for you, we can agree that that is fully open and that will be a challenge. So are you in the shadow or are you in the light? Of the fully expansiveness of it, right? We've got no anchor points in the ego center, meaning that there are no gates defined. It's like a crazy, weird concept for us. So we can be in the bottomless pit, the black hole of it. We can be in the light of it is an abundant resource that never ever runs out because we can do and be and have whatever we want. Or we can be in the neutral of like, I just don't even want to care or think about the ego right now. But at least human design gives us this framework to say, we both know what we're talking about. Like, what topic are we on in this moment within this energetic auric system of, being human and being in a physical body, but also this woo woo spiritual shit?
Yeah. I mean, it was my first real thing in this quest of I left my career. I had no idea what the heck I was going to do in my life. And then someone was like, you're a manifesting generator. Like, you're meant to do all the things. And still, like, years later of me diving into it, I kept thinking, like, oh, once I do this, this is going to be the thing. This is it. And then I realize in my perception of manifesting generator, my soul is a big puzzle. And so, what pieces do I need in this soul driven life that I'm living to be fully embodied? I think the best thing as a manifesting generator as, oh, this goes into my toolkit. This adds to the big picture. And so, getting out of my own way to say, this is the end result. Like, I am meant to do a lot of things, and sometimes they're with me, and sometimes I leave them behind if they're taking my energy away. My idea of what a manifesting generator has totally evolved since the first time I heard about it until this day. When I'm feeling out of alignment, I always go to my human design and say, where am I not living within my design? Where is my energetic circuitry kind of disconnected? Because I have these things that I can light up and use, but if I'm focusing on the areas where I'm inconsistent, I'm going to be letting that energy siphon out, and it's not going to help me. So where can I connect that energy and kind of propel myself forward?
Yes, totally agree. Which is, it's what we all do. And so we can't be mad about it, but we all want what we don't have. I joke with my oldest son all the time that he has grass is greener syndrome. Like, no matter what, the question is always like, what's next? This isn't enough. What can we add to it? And I'm like, son, you can do that until you die, or not. Or we can just be in gratitude of where we are in this moment, right? And we can just kind of like be here now. Because if you're always projecting your energy into the future, you're always projecting your energy into the future, and you're never satisfied as a generator. You never feel at peace as a manifester. You never feel success as a projector because your success is always around the corner. And you never feel surprise as a reflector because you are trying to control the outcomes.
Does that stem from one of his gates or channels?
Oh, my son. He's a
Okay.
manifester.
Okay.
He's a manifester, and he's a very interesting person, and we are endeavoring to figure out why he is already conditioned in his spleen, because he's defined in his spleen, and I'm defined in my spleen too, and his dad is defined in his spleen too. And so we splenic people, okay, people with a defined spleen, project this sense of well-being, generally project of like, yeah, I know what's good, safe, and healthy for me, at least, right? I might be able to tell you, but for me, at least, I know what I need in order to feel good, safe, and healthy. And my son carries a lot of anxiety. We're not really sure where it came from. And so I think for him, it is that conditioning. Maybe it's came in the soul, right? I don't know. Maybe it's prenatal. No way to tell for sure. But at least we can say, okay, we think that this is in the spleen. And so, how can we remind him to be in this present moment and not in the future? Because when you are trying to control the future, that's when you are getting very anxious because it will forever be outside of your control, because it will forever be in the future. But manifestors also want to initiate, right? So he is always looking for the next thing to get started.
Yeah.
It's a whole hodgepodge, these human design charts, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to investigate. I'm an investigator. I like to investigate it. You too.
I wondered because I know one of my channels is ultimately when I call in the most beautiful things, it's when I'm in the now. I stop trying to figure out the how. I like have that vision, I feel it, and then I go searching for it, and I'm just not meant to do that. It needs to kind of come to me. That is when I get anxious, when I'm trying to figure something out, because the world of efficiency, that calls to me. Like, how can I make me, someone else, a system, whatever it is, how can I make it more efficient, whatever it is, so that when I'm in the moment, I can be in the moment and I'm not like frustrated by all the things going wrong. I wondered if there was like a channel or a gate, because I know one of mine does that. And yeah, letting go of the how has been a recent practice of mine. And so many beautiful things have come up with it of like, if this is meant for me, show me, right? And those things will come.
You and him both share gate 20, so it could be.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
That's the gate that I was thinking that it was. So
And that's what defines his spleen. So you have it going around to gate 34 to the sacral
yeah,
center, giving you that channel of charisma, but he's got the 2057. But yes, like it's a lesson.
it
Everything
is.
in your chart has the potential to be a lesson, whether it's colored in or not. If it's colored in, it's like, where have I painted over? Where have I tried to hide who I truly am? And if it's not colored in, where am I trying to compare myself to others and what others have and what others are doing?
I would love to know what led you to learn about human design.
Well, it was that same son.
Okay.
Which it's a very interesting experience to have a manifestor in your life, because manifestors initiate naturally. They just do. Like they don't have to actually do anything. And I think people get this confused in human design a lot. They get jealous. They're like, I want to be a manifestor. I want to manifest things. I want to initiate things. That's not necessarily how the experience goes for them. Their energy manifests, their aura manifests. They can't help but to get things started just by existing. And so there have been so many passion projects that have come out of me as a projector that were guided by my manifestor child, starting with writing a series of children's books of positive affirmations. Because, like I said, he came in this way complaining. And so I'm like, how can I support you? Like, how can we just make it being present our daily practice? Like, how can we really understand this? I really want to support you as your parent, as your projector parent, even. But I didn't know at the time. And so we did this series of children's books. And then I moved on to the next project, which was like, how do I parent this kid that I cannot tell what to do? Because that's manifestors get very angry when you try to inhibit them and control them and limit them. And I'm like, how do I parent a child that I can't tell what to do? And that is when I kind of stumbled across human design on Instagram, just little Instagram graphics and posts that you see. And sometimes you'll read something, you're like, oh, that hits me somewhere. That means something. But my first introduction was actually through the manifestor type. And I began to understand how to parent this person without telling him what to do, right? And I had to take on a whole different style of parenting than the way that I was parented. And I had to take on a whole different communication style of informing rather than trying to do what I do naturally as a projector, which is guide, tell them what to do, right? Like really be this person that, puts you on a path. I had to throw that out the window and say, okay, well, let's do it the way that he's designed, because he's the little person that I don't want to condition. And I know I've got conditioning all over me. And so I learned a lot about the manifestor type, but I was not immediately resonant with the projector type. I joke that like projector is not a word that you want to get tattooed on your body. Like it just doesn't sound cool. And so I was like, me. But learning about the invitation and the lack thereof and nearly uncontrollable pull to guide and to advise and to create efficiencies. I definitely do that. Even if people aren't aware of it, that is the mental struggle that I'm having when I am showing up in groups, when I am hanging out with someone in person, right? I want to be the one to tell you, oh, I know a way. I know a better way. Let me help you make this efficient. I really do want to help you. I want to support you. And so often it wasn't invited because I didn't know. And then it wasn't appreciated, acknowledged, or accepted. And then I just lived in such bitterness. And so when I started to understand the way that my aura works, the signature and the not self themes, I was like, yeah, that's me. And so it's changing me. It's changing me as a parent. It's changing my interaction with my son, which means it's changing my relationships. And so I'm like, there's got to be something to this because I can't not see it now. It's coloring the way that I interact with my entire world. And so that's when I really fell into the rabbit hole. And that was probably 5 years ago. In human design, we call it an experiment, right? And so it's like there's a day you start your experiment. And then when you're 7 years into your experiment, you start to just kind of feel and sense things in a way that you didn't before. So I'm not 7 years yet. I know that for sure. And it's been a little while because I know my son was like little. He was like a toddler when I was having these problems with understanding how to parent him well. It's difficult to learn, it's difficult to break through. It feels like there's a barrier to entry. And so I just kind of played with it for a little while. And then when I began my coaching business, I was pulling up my clients' charts in the background. I wasn't confident to read their chart to them in any way that made a lot of sense, but I had it in the background. And so I started to hear the way that people spoke through their charts because a coach, is all about asking the right questions and being a very active listener. So I'm hearing their charts come through them without knowing the first thing about human design. So I know I haven't conditioned them to believe that this is who they are. I'm looking at it, I'm listening to them talk, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty dang fascinating that that would just exist without their prior knowledge. And so I started to give free reading after that on the side of my coaching business. Probably gave like 50 before I felt like I knew anything about anything because it's a very complex system. And after I did that, I was like, okay, there's definitely something to this. And so I got 3 certifications. I read this massive book. I read some other books. I took a lot of notes. I took some courses a la carte. And I was like, all right, this is a thing. This is a thing, and this is a thing that people like the way that I explain. So let's see what happens here.
A lot of that resonated with me because I was trying to tell people about their human design, and I feel like I was just automatically repelling them from the idea of it. They didn't want to hear about it. And then I realized like a lot of my design was that way. Like they need to be kind of like open and ready to hear it. And so a big piece to my puzzle that I've been building towards my sole purpose is I was a hairstylist for 19 years and I got burnt out from it. And 1,000% it was because I was fighting against my design. I was fighting against that sacral response. I came to a point where I was like starting over and I got so excited about this because I felt like so many people, if they knew their human design, they could operate better. Like I think of it as your operations manual. When things aren't aligning in your life, when things feel tough, how can you take a step back and say, where am I letting my energy leak? Where am I putting my energy into something that's not serving me? And so, yeah, that extra piece that's kind of merging this is the coaching aspect. That how can I use someone's design into coaching them to be more efficient, to be more productive, to feel like they're aligning with their life? Because so many people right now in this awakening are ready to jump to their sole purpose. And I'm like, there isn't one thing meant for you. It's that you are aligned with yourself. And I feel like if people understood how they operate as a person through human design, through their cycle, if they stop living their life through other people's expectations, come inward and see like, oh, these are important aspects of how I operate, how I make decisions, how I should take action, and understand that that is your sole purpose, coming home to yourself. It's finding this aspect of, I know sometimes human design, like their type might not resonate. I always say that, well, if you're not using your authority or your strategy, it won't resonate. If you feel like you're using your energy efficiently, then maybe it's not something you need to learn right now. But I always feel like when you need something, when you need that support of something, it will show up in that right time for you. And that was human design for me. That was using my cycle to kind of revive myself back into a life of living for myself instead of thinking that I should be productive around the clock. Because as a manifesting generator, I could be super productive in a 2 week period of my cycle. And so it's like knowing that I can get a lot done then and not putting pressure to do all the things towards the end of my luteal phase into my menstruation. I began to learn how my body operated more. Like people are like, what do these things have to do with each other? And I'm like, it's how you operate. That's what it comes down to. Both of them, if you can understand how you operate, it will propel you past those roadblocks that you're having, especially if they're reoccurring. Me trying to prove myself is a theme. It's been a theme my whole life. And then now I'm just trying to figure out how to not attach to it, to kind of remove myself and say, oh, I'm trying to prove myself again. What can I do to show myself that self-worth and that love doesn't have to live outside of me? And so do you have any like suggestions on that whole worthiness, wounds that we both share?
Oh wow, well that one hurts.
No.
That ego center hurts. But yeah, I wanted to reflect on what you were saying about purpose for a moment. It all aligns at the end of the day. But people come to me and they're like, what is my purpose? Right? As if it's this big secret, as if it's this hidden thing, if it's as if it's something that you have to find or uncover. And then when you do, it's this magical treasure that solves all of your problems. And I have to break it to people almost on a daily basis that the thing that you're here to do is probably the hardest thing that you've ever done and the hardest thing that you've been doing. I mean, it's your greatest weakness becomes your greatest strength inevitably. And so that thing that you really are challenged by and that you really would wish would go away, that's probably your purpose. And that's probably what we find in your personality sun gate is that thing that was really, really hard for you for a long time. And now you're starting to get it a little bit. And you're starting to feel in your flow states and you're starting to feel a little bit sparky when you think about it instead of feeling very wrong and ashamed when you think about it. That's probably what your purpose is. And also, your purpose is all day, every day. It's not your job,
Yeah.
it's not your career path. It's not that one thing that you do to prove to everyone else that you did something. And so for us, right, our fully open center, we share only one fully open center, and fully open means that there are no gates colored in. So you see in the energy centers, there are some energy centers that are colored in. Doesn't matter what color they are. If they're colored in, they're defined. And you see some that are white, but they have, numbers colored in. Why? Because they're undefined, but at least you kind of have a little bit. You can grasp the concept of it. It's not consistent for you, but at least you kind of get it in some way. But those fully open centers, and not everybody has them, but if you've got a fully open center in your chart, that's the one that it's like, what? Right? I have a friend that has a fully open solar plexus, and she's just like, what are emotions? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do when my partner is upset with me. Like I don't know what to do. And I say the wrong things and I do the wrong things and I don't know how to feel, but then I feel so much about it. But then I also don't feel a lot. And like, what do I do? And that is the massive pendulum swing of this openness that we have in our charts. We don't know what to do. And so for you and I, it's like, what can I do from an ego centered place to show everybody that I'm really good, right? Like, what can I do to prove to everyone that I'm good at what I do? So if my podcast has 1 million downloads, for example, then everybody's going to know. Then they'll know. And then I'll know too, right? And we'll all know that I'm good enough. Except when you get to that point, there's another good enough point to reach. And the same thing with clothes, right? And the same thing with makeup, and the same thing with your relationships, and everywhere, all of the time, anything that is attached to you being in this physical body that will not go with you when you die, that's ego. And so we're walking around having this human experience, and like our ego is just lit up all over the place. Like, I want that, and I want that. And if I'm driving a Ferrari, then everybody knows that I'm the best, right? And if I have, all of this clout in my business, then everybody knows. And if I've been doing it for a number of years, that makes me more valuable. It just triggers you all day, every day. And so, as I mentioned before, there's a shadow, a light, and a neutral to all things. So we're able to get out of that pain and that triggered state and that part of us that wants to prove. Then we can go, oh, this is all made up. Like I'm in a meat suit, in a bag of bones, on a space rock, in a universe that we don't even know when or where or how it ends. So there are moments where we can go way, way on one side of the pendulum swing and say, like, I have no ego. And then there are all the other moments every day where I have all of the ego and I have everything to prove. And we just live on that threshold. And every energy center has the potential to do that. The most common would be the ego center and the crown center because they have the fewest gates. So there are a lot of people walking around with, like, I know all of the answers. I know none of the answers. I know all of the answers. I know none of the answers. And where are the answers? And who knows the answers, right? And so every single energy center has the potential for the ping pong battle. And when we can actually get to the neutral of it, when we actually are not putting focus there, that's when we start to really embody our strategy and authority. And it's my goal, right, to make human design digestible so you can actually do something with it or about it. And really, the only things to do are manage your energy, which is your strategy, and make decisions, which is your authority. That's it, right? When you get overwhelmed and I got all these gates and what's my purpose and what am I supposed to do and what's next and what's the answer and who has the answer and how do I prove it? And when you get into that, you have to remind yourself, well, how can I manage this energy? Because it feels very haywire. Okay, I'm going to use my strategy, which comes from my type. And then as I'm doing that, things will come in for me to respond to or to intuitively have a nudge about or to ask a question about whatever it is. Opportunities will come in, and I'm going to use my authority instead of my brain. And so for me, splenic authority, my question is this good, safe, and healthy for me? Do I feel safe doing this, right? Because that matters, being splenic. For a generator or manifesting generator who's sacral authority, the question is, like, how excited am I about this? Do I want to commit my energy here? I've got cool energy that people like. Do I want to put it there? That's the question. If you're emotional authority, the question to ask is, can I be patient? How long can I wait? Because that sacral is speaking. If you're emotional authority generator, have I given myself the time to sleep on this and really be sure that I want to commit my thoroughness and my depth to this? And every authority has its own question to ask, and I have lists of these on my website, which make it really easy. But that's it. You don't have to figure out your purpose. You don't have to do anything. Just strategy and authority. That's really all you're supposed to do. And then, all of us just have a lot of fun getting up in our mind and trying to figure out the answers to them.
I think that's the biggest piece too when people are trying to make decision. I'm like, first and foremost, you're meant to process it through your minds, but like your decisions are not meant to be made from your mind. Like no one is built that way. And so how can you tap into that? Are you ready to make a real change in your life? Here are just a few benefits on working with me as a certified holistic coach. Together, we gain insight into your authentic self. We explore your design with modalities like human design, cycle vitality, and astrology. And you'll gain a deeper understanding of your unique strengths, challenges, and your purpose in life. Together, we work on improving relationships. Understanding your own design helps you communicate more effectively with other people, build stronger relationships, and have more fulfilling connections around you. We increase your productivity. By aligning your work with your natural rhythms and your strengths, you'll be able to work smarter and not harder, achieve your goals, and live with a greater ease in your life. We work together on reducing stress and overwhelm. By working with me, you'll learn how to manage your energy, reduce stress, and cultivate more balance in your life. We work on a more authentic life. When you're aligned with your unique design, you'll feel more confident, empowered, and fulfilled in every area of your life. Those are the benefits with working with me. As a certified intuitive life coach, my focus is not telling people about their human design, cycle vitality, or even astrology. Instead, my role is to help you discover and align with your desires and take aligned action based on how you operate. It is time for you to look within at how powerful you are and welcome your intuitive intelligence. If you want to work with me, head to karadempsey.com/offerings. If coaches understood their clients' inner authority, how they make decisions, and their strategy, how they should take action, I feel like it would help propel them so much in their blocks and everything. And so that's a big piece of What I'm doing is to really help empower other coaches just to use those. But I find so many people are like, I try to look up my incarnation cross and what are these gates and what are these channels? And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you don't use those pieces, none of it will make sense. You have to really practice and practice. And I still have to practice every day using my strategy and my inner authority to really stay connected with myself. I know it's so exciting when you start to feel resonant with your human design and you want to dive into it, but it's just like, please just start with the basics. And then as you start to learn that, you can really embrace the other pieces because it's just so overwhelming, such an intricate system that I don't want people to get lost in it because there's so much to it. And I feel like I spent so many years trying to uncover and dive into it. And it was just like, oh, the foundations. That's where it starts. Foundations. Start there.
Yes.
Right?
And we are first line profiles, so we love the foundations. We love getting to the bottom of it. We want to go down the rabbit hole and know all of the things because knowledge creates this foundation of safety, knowing the answers. And that's a advice that I give. Secondary to strategy and authority. First, figure out your aura. Figure out how to manage your energy really well. Practice it. Try it on for size. And then start to notice that opportunities are coming your way. And when they do, practice your authority. Okay. Practice like, what does my body want me to do instead of my mind this time? And then after that, secondary to that, right? If you're just waiting, all of us are waiting, and you're like, what the heck do I do? I have to do, right? Society taught me to do, must do. If you really need something to do, go look at your profile. And I love that the profile numbers have a little slash in between because to me, it looks like about a scale. Okay. This is how you're going to create balance in your life. This is what you do while you wait. If you're a first line, go learn something new. Okay. It's going to shift your perspective. If you read a book, somebody else wrote it. So you get a brand new point of view because you're in the writer's point of view. Learn something new and you're going to feel really good and you're going to be stop focusing on whatever it is that you were focusing on that was getting you into this pit of what's the right answer. If you're a second line, you're the hermit. But you're also the natural, right? And so like stop trying to learn everything. Honor what you naturally know. Honor what you are intuitively drawn toward and do it with some alone time. Take some time for yourself. Be by yourself. Be in your own energy and your own aura. If you're third line, like you got to get out of your comfort zone. Go try something new. Okay, like do something. Bump into something. This is what you have to do as a third. Like, you have to experiment. Don't sit around thinking about it. Go like put your feet to the fire. Just do it. The fourth line, it's like maybe go ask one of your friends. Maybe you're just really missing connection. Okay, go hang out with somebody that you like. That's what's most important to you. Don't sit there in your mind. Talk to somebody new. Give somebody a compliment. It doesn't matter. You want to connect deeply with people. If you're a fifth line, go help somebody. You want to solve all of the problems. You get stuck solving your own problems. Go volunteer. Put your energy toward solving problems in a way that doesn't feel like a bottomless pit of the mind to you. And then if you're a sixth line, like envision your best case scenario. Envision your highest self. Embody the role model. Let yourself be the role model. Stop thinking that you're not enough or you don't have enough experience or you haven't tried enough or you haven't done enough. Just pretend. Pretend you already are. And if you are the role model, how do you show up differently? Who is that person? And allow that person to really like come through and thrive. That's what you can do while you wait. Don't start
Yeah.
thinking again. That got you in trouble in the first place.
That's like mostly why people come for like the coaching is like they're so stuck in their mind. And it's just like, how can we remind people to get in their body and use these different aspects that can help guide us? Get out of your mind, man. So many people are left with so much indecision because they're just so stuck in their minds. And so those are beautiful ways. And everything comes down to energy, right? Like everything comes down to energy. And so how can we manage our energetic being? And so having tangible tips like that it's a beautiful way. So thank you so much for sharing that. We all process things differently. We all do things differently. So how can we find something that really speaks to us? And I always tell people be open to flowing with changing. You know what I mean? Like everybody's built differently. So some people need like the same structure. But if it's not serving you, look at it in a way of like, what else can benefit me? I do really well with a set routine, but I also know I will let it totally fall by the wayside if I try to make myself stick to something that doesn't feel good to me. That's going to take my energy away. And so is it meditation tomorrow and EFT the next day and breath work the next day? Yeah, like I'm just going to kind of go with what feels good to me.
Yeah.
I think
It's all an experiment. Try it on and see how you feel. But at least don't keep doing what you were doing before that you didn't like.
That's for sure. When I found human design was just knowing my emotional center was undefined and open. And I always felt like I was like cool, calm, and collected by myself. And then I get around other people, and that's when my anxiety would come in. Is I would feel everybody's energy, and I didn't know how to deal with that. And so just bringing up those energetic practices have totally flipped the switch for me. When I go in spaces, having that protection, when I end a call with a client, that energy clearing. And so just having those things. And then if I'm in an argument with someone, 99% of the time, I'm going to reflect back what they're giving me. They come at me hot, my Aries, I'm coming back hotter. So, like, knowing that I got to take a step out, I got to take a breath, and I gotta kind of see what's mine, what's theirs, and come at it at a different aspect. It's just like as you learn, seeing what resonates and, not holding on to anything too much, like you were saying before.
Yeah, I mean, you hear people say the term set boundaries, right? And
Yeah.
people hear that and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to do that. But it's a bit vague, like where and why and how and about what. And so if you look at the undefined centers in your chart and you say, okay, this is where I can set boundaries. So we both share the undefined emotional center, the solar plexus, and we look and we say, okay, I'm going to set boundaries around emotions specifically. And what setting a boundary means is telling my conscious awareness, as well as my subconscious and my nervous system, what's mine and what isn't. Where do I end and where do you begin? And so the easiest way to do that is to take someone's emotions and reflect it back to them. What I heard you say was you're feeling really a lot of feelings about this. And I do this with my kids all of the time. Wow, it looks like you're really heated about this. Or it looks like you're feeling really happy about this. It looks like you're really pleased. Okay. But at least if I say it out loud, it gives my body a chance to say, oh, that that wasn't mine. Because I can get overwhelmed with good stuff too. And when we get overwhelmed with the good stuff, we want to keep it forever and ever. When it goes away, we get really upset with ourselves. Like, what did I do wrong? I'm not in the right vibration, right? Where did it go? And so being able to in each center say, okay, that's probably yours. Good for you. I'm happy for you. And here's the boundary of where I end and you begin. And I'm going to reflect it to you, and you're going to like it when you hear it. And that works with every single energy center, right? The root creates stress and pressure, but it also creates momentum. And so someone is feeling really stressed. Hey, I'm noticing that you're feeling really stressed. Good, cool. I know that that's not mine and that's yours. And now you also are aware of your stress, and do you want to do something about it or not? But here's the boundary. Same thing. It looks like you're really feeling excited. That's the sacral center, right? Or it seems like you feel unproductive today, or you feel like you could be more efficient. I get it. The spleen, right? You feel very anxious, or you feel depressed. You feel like, what's going on, or you feel like you're not in touch with your intuition. I understand. You feel like you don't know where you're going or who you are. That's the G center. The ego center is like, what can I prove and who can I prove it to? And you're feeling very competitive right now. Okay, cool. Good to know, right? The throat, you're seeking some attention. I say this to my son all the time. It seems like you're provoking your brother because you're bored. Maybe you need a little bit of attention, right? And it helps them understand and contextualize their own life and create their own boundaries in the future. Same thing with the ajna center, right? I appreciate your perspective on this. Now I know that that's your perspective and isn't mine, and I don't have to do anything about it, and I don't have to make it mine. Seems like you really have a lot of thoughts about this. Seems like you really are looking for an answer or revelation. Wow, you're really seeking some clarity in this situation. The crown center. This is how the easiest way to set boundaries, right? Is to understand what's yours and what isn't, and also how you might be conditioning and influencing the other. And what a favor to you it would be if they would reflect you back to you sometimes. And so being able to operate in that way in your relationships, and even being able to model it before anybody else knows what's going on, it starts to create these healthy boundaries. It starts to create this open communication where nothing is right and nothing is wrong. It just is. This is you and this is me, and this is the science of differentiation.
Beautiful way of putting boundaries, because yeah, I think people are like, what are boundaries? And not having boundaries was definitely a big piece of my burnout, but it was that emotional absorption. I was taking all these heavy emotions my clients were bringing me in the chair,
Hmm.
and my open spleen wouldn't let them go. They would grab onto them and I could not let things go. I would hold on to it. I would lose sleep at night because I would worry about their situation or just holding that space for them. And I loved my clients, but I got to a point where their stuff was burning me out because I didn't know how to let it go. I didn't have that energetic practice of being like, oh, wow, you feel this way. I would be like, I feel this with you. To be honest, I was in this big space the last few years of like, I'm never working one on one with people again. My ego was like, no, that's what happened the last time. And as I've been building this business and doing these things, I've been coaching people all along, and they kept telling me I need a coach. And I'm like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. And then when I kind of got my ego out of the way and realized, oh, I can do this because I'm setting boundaries now. I can still hold space and not attached to what their emotional outcome is. And I can clear that energy after I'm going. And so, that's ultimately what a coach is, right? Reflecting back to them what they're saying. Do I want to help people through the problems they're having? 1,000%. But it's not going to have that energetic connection, that energetic cord, because ultimately that's not serving them either. If I'm connecting to that emotional response they're having, it's going to be harder for them to work through it themselves because there's that tether. It's a beautiful thing that I can do for clients as well, right?
Yeah. And it takes a
Yeah.
lot of concentration.
And practice, right? It's all practice, right?
It does, yeah. And see, and this is just how you naturally embody your purpose. You didn't have to figure it out. You didn't have to dig it up. You didn't have to uncover it. It was just there.
Yeah.
And, same for me. But honestly, opposite of experience of my emotional center. And I want to reflect this for anyone who feels this way about theirs. Like, I naturally could not handle other people's emotions. And it was just very difficult. And so I would never empathize. And I had a very hard time with empathy and sympathy and being able to hold people's emotions. And so I would just kind of like push them away. I just can't connect with you. I don't want to connect with you. Like, I don't want to hear about, the depth of your feeling because it's too much for me. And so it made me feel very cold and detached. And that's another experience of that undefined emotional center, right? You can be very empathic, but you can also be the opposite and be like, nah, I don't
Yeah.
feel it and I don't want to feel it because it's too much for me and it always has been, right? Because of my life experience. Coming to that neutral state of, oh, I get it now. That's undefined and I didn't want to amplify. And so now instead of refusing to allow people to have their emotions, oh, now I have the healthy practice of reflecting it back to them. And so now I don't have to be the empath and I don't have to take on that thing that, takes up a lot of space in my body that's not supposed to be there. I always tell people your undefined centers, it's like a sponge. You can pull in all of that and you can hold on to it. What happens when you don't rinse out your sponge and you just leave it in the sink and it holds on to everything that it's not supposed to? It gets stinky. You have to empty it. The job here is to absorb it. That's cool. We're having an experience. We're washing dishes and then we empty it out, right? And then new dishes come in and new food comes in and then we empty it out again. Because if you hold on to it forever, it just stagnates. It gets gross.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also wonder if your son being an Aquarius has anything to do with that. I know so many Aquarians that kind of have that as well. It's just like it puts them like in an uncomfortable space, and so like they don't know how to let someone process their emotions. So it's beautiful that you brought up that practice of like reflecting back to them because you're bringing awareness to it. And I feel like a lot of times some of people in my life, they just kind of like ignore that's a thing. And you know what I mean? If someone's trying to process their emotions, that can feel kind of harsh,
Yes.
unempathetic, as you kind of put it. So
Yes. And honestly, human design took what I knew about astrology and turned it on its head. And it gave it so much more depth and understanding and permission for people to be more multifaceted than I was
yes.
letting them because I have a Cancer child who is non emotional. And I have an Aquarius child who is emotional authority, right? And so it's like, wait, what? Cancers are supposed to be emotional and Aquarians are supposed to be non emotional. But I have a non emotional Cancer and I have an emotional Aquarius. What? Now what do we do, right? And so you take all of those pieces and you create a very dynamic whole of a person that's having a human experience and that has emotions and experiences emotions for my Cancer that are unpredictable because it's undefined. And an Aquarius that experiences his own predictable pattern of emotions but maybe doesn't know what to do with mine. Okay, that's fine because he's already creating it from his own source and that's his understanding And that's his depth and his thoroughness, is to ride his wave. And my other son, the Cancer that's non emotional, is understanding the unpredictability of emotions, and what do I do with mine, and what do I do with yours, and what do I do with about all of it, right? And so to be able to kind of like marry these four different systems together. So human design is Western astrology, it's the Kabbalah, it's the I Ching, and it's the Hindu Brahmin chakra system. When you marry all of these together, it's like, oh, okay, now we have a whole new thing that allows us to be more human in our experience.
Yeah, definitely. I was taking a peek at your chart a little bit, and we have a lot of similarities in some ways and definitely not similarities in others. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love kind of
And
looking at that.
it's all really fascinating. And, us being born around the same time gives us the same North Node. And so,
Yeah.
like, we're having this experience with our peers, but then that we are having experiences that are so different from our peers at the same time. It all just becomes this melting pot of amazingness.
Just a point that you talked about earlier was just the fact of using human design can help you in relationships 1,000%. Whatever you're doing, if you're a boss, if you're a parent, if however you relate to people, because when you see how people process things differently, when you see people need to make their decisions differently than you do, they need to take action differently. It's like we open up an idea of being like, oh, we are all different, and we let people flourish in their uniqueness to really be the best version of themselves. I feel like everyone could benefit understanding the foundations of human design so that they can just have a better relationship with themselves and those people around them. My husband's always told me this, but he jokes that like I always have to hear from external resources to like prove it. And so human design did this. He has an emotional response, and so he needs time to go through his emotions before he makes a decision. I'm sacral. I know instantly. And so I just did not understand that's not how he made decisions until I saw it. And he was like, I told you that. I've told you that for 20 years. And I'm like, I know, but sometimes I got to see it to believe it. It's just been a beautiful experience as a parent to understand just those intricate things. I think this is a beautiful time to talk about how people can work with you, learn more about human design, and really cultivate that understanding. So, can you tell listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So when I first started learning about human design, it was like putting together a jigsaw puzzle that you just didn't have all the pieces of. It was all over the place. And I was just grasping at straws, trying to like find a resource. And when I did find a resource that actually had the information that I wanted, it was like it was in another language, right? The things that Ross said, what are you talking about? And so it has been my mission since I started doing readings to give you the foundational knowledge that you need to do whatever you want next, right? Whatever you want to do next. You want to get a reading with me? Great. You want to get a reading with so and so? Great too. You want to go become a reader? Cool. You want to become an analyst? Do that. But at least know what you're getting into and get the foundation. And so about a year ago, I started working on my website, which is the same as my handle, it's the Feel Good Expert. .com. It's funny, I came up with that before I really understood where it was in my human design, but it's all over it naturally, right? Being the defined spleen one, but also my strongest sense is feeling. I want the vibes to be right. And so I created this website to where people could go and instantly get a free mini reading. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't have to go buy a book. You don't have to know anything. Like there's nothing that you have to do in advance of showing up here to get all of the basics that you need. And so from your type all the way down to your environment and those variables, it's all there in video format and digestible, right? Like 3 minutes at a time. And so if you go on my website and type in your birth date, your exact birth time, and your birth location, it pulls up this chart, which again looks like geometry. It's ridiculous. But right next to it or under it, depending on what kind of device you're on, you get this list of chart properties. And so every single thing that's highlighted is going to explain to you what that is. And it is exactly what I wish I had. I wish I had the foundational knowledge when I got started. I wish I didn't have to go all over the place. I wish I didn't have to piece it together. I wish I didn't have to pretend that I knew what I was talking about when I didn't. And so that's where I would suggest you start. Get the understanding of your chart. And then maybe if you want to, if you're relational, go and look up somebody else's and see how they're different from you. And then let your path take you wherever it will go next. But the only thing to do with or about it, again, is strategy and authority, which there are videos to explain yours. on my website. So that's how you can find me, the Feel Good Expert. I'm on TikTok as the Feel Good Expert. I'm on Instagram as the Feel Good Expert. I'm on YouTube as the Feel Good Expert. I'm on Pinterest as the Feel Good Expert. I try to make it very easy to find me because I am a projector and I'm waiting for invitations. So don't ever feel like reaching out to me is too much or a burden, because this is literally what I do. I will not reach out to you. You reach out to me. Once we have established that foundation with each other, there are lots of places you can go. And like I said, I'm not attached. Go wherever your authority tells you to go. But if you're looking for a one-on-one reading, that is something that I offer. If you're looking for coaching specific to your design, that is something that I've been doing for a while. If you're looking for a course, if you're looking for a PDF, I offer all of that in the way that I share human design, which my endeavor is to make it digestible and easy to experiment with, and then do whatever you want next. So everything is the Feel Good Expert.
Yeah, I'll make sure all of that's in the show notes. And I just want to kind of mention that I attract so many projectors in my life because as a manifesting generator, I'm always doing. And I really need someone to be able to reflect back my blind spots. And so sometimes it's having that coach, having someone really see you from a different perspective. And that's the beautiful thing about all the different types, is because they will bring a whole different piece to you because they'll see it from a different perspective. And so,
yes,
yeah.
100% agree. Everybody needs an objective support person. And objective means that you're not in relationship with them. Because if you are, you have a conditioning dynamic that is consistent. You just do. This is what we learn in connection charts and human design. The things that show up between you always do, the same way your chart is always your chart. And so when you have an objective support person, anything that you say is not going to impact the relationship that you have with that person. And then you can really get it out. Then you can really start to have this understanding, and you can really feel your feels if you need to, or ask the questions if you need to. It's not going to impact the dynamic that you have between someone that you're close to, like a husband or a best friend or even a child. It doesn't have to be about human design. It can be a therapist, it can be a counselor, it can be a business coach, it can be a mentor. It doesn't matter. But everybody 100% needs an objective support person, and let your authority tell you who the right person is.
1,000%. I think I would have been so much farther on my trajectory of what I've been doing if I would have gotten out of my own way and stubborn and really leaned into a coach or someone that could really help break through the things that I didn't see. So if you're on this self-discovery journey and you're feeling stuck, finding someone to support you, whoever speaks to you, is the first place you should start. Or understanding how you're designed first, and then finding that person to help you.
We're open ego. We don't compete.
No,
room for everybody.
That's the beautiful thing, and that's my mantra. Like, there is room for everybody, and it's really finding the best way to support yourself, and only you can figure that out. So I will make sure that all of her information's in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. Is there anything else that you want to close out with before we sign off?
Yeah, just to remind everybody that it's not that serious. Again, meat suit, bag of bones, space rock, in a universe that we don't even know where the end of it is. Whatever it is that's going on with you, it feels big and it will pass. And human design will give you the opportunity to kind of pinpoint those pain points and why they have felt the way that they have for so long and what you can do next. Everything's working out. Best case scenario.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Well, Tangie, thank you so much for coming on Floatictivity, and we will chat soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. If this was your first time, welcome. And if you've joined me for previous episodes, thank you so much for coming back. Before you go, could you share my show with a friend and subscribe? Those few seconds make a big impact on my show, and I'd be grateful for the support. I love this interview with Tangie. I can dive into all things human design, and let me tell you, there are no two human design coaches alike. So I just love how Tangie breaks it down for us. If you want to find out how to connect with her, check the show notes and all the links mentioned at karadempsey.com/65. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll chat soon.